The first time my husband told me he was in love with another woman, I laughed. Not a hysterical laugh. Not a bitter one either. It was slow, calm, almost curious, like I just heard a joke that arrived 10 years too late. Ethan stood across from me in our living room, the same room where we'd once danced barefoot at midnight because the power went out and we didn't want the moment to end. The same room where I'd cried silently on the couch after every failed IVF attempt while he pretended to sleep upstairs. Now, sunlight cut through the glass walls, exposing everything. Dust, silence, and the way his hands trembled even as he tried to look confident. "I've found my true love," he said, voice rehearsed. "Her name is Lila. She understands me. I don't want to waste any more years living a lie." 10 years of marriage. Reduced to a lie in one sentence. I studied his face. The faint wrinkle near his left eye I used to kiss. The jawline I once traced while planning our future. He looked relieved. Excited even. As if he expected tears, screaming, maybe begging. Instead I smiled. Then I laughed. And then I reached for my phone. "Who are you calling?" he asked, startled. "My assistant," I replied calmly. "This affects my schedule." That was the moment his confidence cracked. You see, Ethan always believed I was lucky to have him. A middle-class woman who married up. A supportive wife who quit her job temporarily, so he could focus on his career. What he never noticed was that I never stopped working. I just worked quietly, invisibly, while building something he never bothered to understand. "Don't play games, Ava," he snapped. "I'm being honest with you." "So am I said softly. "Give me 5 minutes." I stepped into my home office, a room he rarely entered because it made him uncomfortable. The walls were lined with certificates, investment charts, and framed emails that read congratulations on closing the deal. My assistant, Maya, answered on the second ring. "Clear my afternoon," I said. "And bring the blue file." When I returned, Ethan was pacing. "You're taking this too lightly," he said. "I expected more." "I know," I replied. "That's why you're nervous." He scoffed. "You think you can scare me? I've already talked to a lawyer." He nodded. "Good. Mine already knows." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Maya walked in, poised and professional, carrying a slim leather folder. Ethan stared at her like she didn't belong here. "This is my assistant," I said. "Maya, this is Ethan. My husband." Her polite smile didn't reach her eyes. "We've met. Briefly. At the charity gala." Ethan froze. The gala. The one he attended as my +1, and complained all night about being bored. I opened the blue file and slid it across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "Everything you don't know about me," I replied. "And everything you're about to lose." His laughter was forced. "You're bluffing." I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Outside, the city hummed like nothing had changed. Inside, 10 years of imbalance began to tilt. As Ethan opened the file, the color drained from his face. And that's when he realized. He wasn't leaving a helpless wife. He was walking away from a woman who had been preparing for this moment longer than he could imagine. Ethan always said he knew me better than anyone. That was his first mistake. As he flipped through the pages, his breathing changed, sharp, uneven. Financial statements, company registrations, shareholding agreements. My name appeared again and again, not as a spouse, but as a founder. This can't be real," he muttered. "Oh, it is," I said. "I just never needed your permission." 10 years ago, when Ethan told me to quit my marketing job because a wife shouldn't be exhausted all the time, I listened. But instead of shrinking, I redirected. While he slept, I consulted overseas clients. While he networked, I invested. While he believed he was the provider, I became the backbone. I remembered the nights I cooked dinner with one hand and typed proposals with the other. The times he dismissed my ideas with a laugh. "Relax, Ava. You don't need to prove anything." He was right. I didn't need to prove it to him. "You own 40% of a consulting firm," he asked, voice hoarse. Correction, Maya said calmly. She owns 62%. Ethan's face twisted. Why didn't you tell me? I tilted my head. You never asked. Silence fell between us, thick and suffocating. And Lila, I continued casually. Does she know you're still living in a house I paid for? His head snapped up. You paid for this house. Smiled. Surprise. The truth was, I once loved him deeply. Believed in us. But love doesn't survive long where respect is absent. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking him to see me, and started seeing myself instead. I want a fair divorce, he said finally. We can be civilized. Of course, I replied. I believe in fairness. He relaxed just a little. That was his second mistake. Fair, I continued, means full disclosure. I nodded at Maya. She placed another folder on the table. What now? Ethan asked, exasperated. Now, I said, we talk about your side ventures. The undeclared income. The investment you made using my account without my knowledge. His mouth opened, closed. How do you? I know everything, I said gently. I always did. The man in front of me looked nothing like the confident husband who walked in that morning. He looked like someone realizing the ground beneath him was never solid. You're doing this to punish me, he accused. I shook my head. No, I'm doing this to free myself. That night, after he stormed out, I sat alone in the dark living room. My laughter from earlier echoed back at me, hollow now. Strength doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you don't let pain decide your future. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Eva, this is Lila. We need to talk. There are things about Ethan you should know. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Because if there was one thing I had learned after 10 years of marriage, it was this. The truth always arrives late, but when it does, it changes everything. I didn't reply to Lila right away. Power isn't always about acting fast. It's about knowing when to wait. The next morning, I met her at a quiet cafe across town. She looked younger than I expected. Softer. Nervous hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. I didn't know he was still married, she blurted out the moment I sat down. I believed her. Or at least I believed she believed that. He said you were separated, she continued. That you were cold, ambitious, married to your work. I smiled faintly. That's his favorite version of me. She swallowed. There's more. And then she told me. About the money he borrowed in her name. About the promises he made while planning to use my assets as leverage. About the way he spoke of me not as a wife, but as an obstacle. With every word, something inside me hardened. Not into anger but clarity. He's not leaving you for love, she said quietly. He's running. He nodded. I know. When I returned home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop. For the first time, I wasn't reacting, I was directing. Within days, the consulting firm announced a major merger. My name appeared in headlines. Ethan read in disbelief. His lawyer stopped returning his calls. His accounts froze pending investigation. He showed up at my door one night, eyes wild. You ruined me, he shouted. I looked at him through the glass, unmoved. No, you did. Please, he whispered. We can fix this. Finally opened the door. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be ended. As he walked away, broken and small, I felt something unexpected. But peace, I would soon learn, is fragile. Because revenge isn't the climax. It's the beginning of transformation. 3 months after the divorce papers were finalized, I stood in my new office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a city that finally felt like it belonged to me. People called me ruthless, cold, strategic. They weren't wrong. But they weren't right either. I wasn't shaped by revenge. I was shaped by survival. One evening as I packed up, I found an old photo tucked inside a drawer. Ethan and me. Younger. Smiling. A version of myself who believed love required shrinking. I tore it in half. Not out of anger but gratitude. Because losing him forced me to find me. I no longer laughed when people underestimated me. Smiled. And I walked forward. Because the bravest thing a woman can do after betrayal is not destroy the man who broke her, but build a life so powerful his absence becomes irrelevant.